On today's Locked On Senators, we'll discuss the organization's first off-season departure.
And we continue with our 2024 NHL Draft Prospect Profiles with our first and only goalie of our rankings.
We'll get into all that and more on today's edition of the Locked On Senators podcast. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
I'm Jake Sanderson, and you're listening to Locked On Senators podcast.
I'm Tim Stützle, and you're listening to the Locked On Senators podcast.
Welcome inside episode 1045 of the Locked On Senators podcast. I'm Ross Levitan on the outskirts of enemy territory in Winnipeg, Manitoba, alongside Brandon Piller up in the Blue Mountains. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. You can also follow the show on social media. We're at Sens Central on Twitter, LockedOn.Senators on Instagram. The show is free and available on all podcast platforms, including on YouTube, where we say hello and let you know that a like, comment, and subscription go a long way to helping the show grow. Today is Tuesday, May 14th, and Pilsy, once again, Ottawa Senators are the main character at the World Hockey Championships, and I gotta say that game yesterday between the U.S. and Slovakia was simply hilarious.
Yeah, who knew there was such a rivalry going there? I mean, right off the opening draw, we're getting chippiness, and the refs are like, what's going on here? What are we doing? But it's always nice to see the Sens shine, especially in international tournaments, as Brady had a good game. Pinto had a good game, although, Ross, Brady wasn't necessarily satisfied with how that game went.
All-time funny clip from Claire Hanna, our friend, on the bench after the game saying, wait, we know you play a physical style. What was it with the chippiness out there? He goes, too bad there's no fighting. That's all I got to say. It's too bad there's no fighting. Yeah, he scored one of the nicest goals of the tournament so far. Nice, how are you, around the defenseman. Lifted his stick to make sure he got positioning. Slid it in 5-hole, but he's like, no, I just wanted to fight someone. Like, that's all he wanted to do. There was a great clip going around as well of after a scrum, Juraj Slafkovsky hunting down Shane Pinto, giving him a little bump, and Pinto gave him the old, get out of here, go for a change, bud, and just gave him a pat on the side and skated off. Hilarious.
Yeah, and Habs fans somehow interpreted that as Slafkovsky like owning Pinto, and then Ross, you got to put on a platter for you, clapping back at Habs fans claiming that Slafkovsky owns the Sens. I can't even say it without laughing. That's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. But yeah, that was a funny clip, and just classic Shane Pinto, just cool, chill guys, just like just go back to your back.
I'm surprised he didn't give himself a laugh, though. That would have been the only thing that made it better.
Yeah, well, he probably had a couple laughs about that.
Yeah, no doubt. It was great.
Slav. There's something there.
I think it's like Slav.
The Juraj Slafkovsky story.
Hey, this is the most Juraj Slafkovsky's been discussed on our show since he was drafted, because if you don't know, in 4 games against the Ottawa Senators, he has no goals, 1 point. I think he has 2 shots on goal and is a -6 in 4 games. So way to go, pal. Nice ownership right
Congrats.
there. However, it's nice to see the boys shine. Pinto's goal was nice as well. And Jake Sanderson had an assist in that game on top of that. So those are the NHL players that are still ongoing overseas. Yesterday on the show, we gave our opinion on what we saw on an NHL.com article of those 3, what they think of head coach Travis Green. We've covered the Travis Green hiring, I think, plenty. If you want more from that, go check out last week and yesterday's Locked On Senators. But we had a bit of news yesterday. Lassi Thomson has signed with Malmo in the Swedish Hockey League. Malmo is a once proud organization. They've really stumbled, haven't made the playoffs last year, and they seem very excited based on their press release yesterday that Lassi Thomson will be going to the SHL. He's a restricted free agent, so if the Senators do qualify him, they will retain his rights, even though he's overseas, much like they did with Vitaly Abramov, who plays in the KHL. Your thoughts when you heard the news that the Belleville Sens all-time defenseman, games played leader, is taking his talents overseas?
Yeah, well, like you mentioned, it's important to note that the Sens still have his rights, so it's not exactly a done deal that he's going over there. But
well, if they want his rights, they don't have to qualify him.
Exactly, yeah. So the ball's in the Sens court, really, but I foresee this as Lassie's exit here. Ross, the only thing that surprised me about this, and I want to get your opinion on this, were you surprised it was an SHL team, not a Liga team, or more specifically Eels, that signed him?
Well, I will take a guess out of thin air and say that this team offered him the most money.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely fair, but I just would have thought Finnish guy. He was in the Eels system since 2014. You would have thought maybe that's his first choice, but I do remember Ross in that final COVID weird blended year where he was with Eels and Belleville. Lassie wasn't getting a lot of playing time there, but I think that was more Eels being like, look, we know you're going over to Belleville. Why would we put you in our top 4 when we have other guys we want to elevate here? So if he was fully committed to going over there, I would have thought he would want to be back in Finland and back with Eels. Or maybe this is just a fact of Lassie being like, I want a different experience. I don't know.
Yeah, getting opportunity as well. I'm sure he'll be their number one defenseman and get that chance to really carry a team. He played over 200 games, 202 with the Belleville Sens, had 93 points, was a -28, a couple tough seasons most recently, and in 18 NHL games had 5 assists, was -10. And Pilsy, where would you rank among the most egregious moments of this season? The vitriol online after Lassi Thomson was claimed by the Anaheim Ducks after training camp.
I mean, it's a little hilarious to look back on. I even found it hilarious at the time. Like,
asset management.
Yeah, like, and now people that saw the Malmo tweet were like, "What a terrible mismanagement by the Sens."
Still?
Oh yeah, people are still on that train. Which, look,
Dorian's gonna be taking ricochet shots for a long time.
I know, poor guy. But Ross, we could do an entire exercise of going through first round draft picks, not just from the Sens, but just throughout the league that don't pan out. Like it happens, unfortunately. And I don't want to say it's Lassie's fault. I don't want to say it's the Sens' fault, but he wasn't able to find his spot in this organization. It seemed like him and JBD were always fighting for the same job. And now clearly JBD has emerged as the guy, which we kind of thought he would. But I would say, Ross, Lassie's biggest downfall that hindered his development, maybe I shouldn't say biggest, but one of the factors would be the fact that when he was drafted, the Tom Bomb, his slap shot, was advertised as one of his best attributes. We hardly saw that at all in Belleville. And when we did see it, I feel like there's highlights of him scoring with slap shots from the point, but that was a tool in his toolbox that he didn't use very often. And I think that was an unfortunate part of why he wasn't able to pick things up offensively.
Yeah, I agree. And it's unfortunate to see it turn out like this. Still, I mean, Lassie can still have himself a nice little career, but doubtful that it will be in Ottawa. Sounds so like he could be open to the possibility. It's a 2-year contract in Malmo, coming over either after that or maybe they sign him during it. Who knows? But Lassi Thomson is going to Malmo and the SHL. If you're watching on YouTube, I've pulled up the back half of the first round of the 2019 draft. And it's not like you can look behind Lassie and say, oh my goodness, what a miss right behind him. Philip Tomasino is coming into his own. He was drafted 24th overall. Lassie, of course, was 19th. Connor McMichael coming into his own as well. But there's no egregious like superstar that's gone there. If this extended to 32, that would probably be the best player. And oh yeah, that's Shane Pinto, first pick of the second round that season. So I'm just looking at it as, yeah, it's unfortunate it didn't pan out, but at least we don't have to litigate it and saying, oh, what if the Senators were able to get player X and it would have changed the trajectory of the rebuild. Lassie's been on the show before. We had a nice little tour around Tampere with him when he came on. We did a little Finnish tourism. Seems like a really good guy, and we wish him all the best. It's unfortunate that it didn't work out here. It would have been great if he, Cole Reinhardt, and Igor Sokolov, the three kind of long-term 200-plus game AHLers, could have gone on a bit deeper of a playoff run. I think it's unfortunate they weren't able to, but good on him for getting a good ticket, I'd imagine, with Malmo. And again, wish him all the best. On the other side, we're going to look at the Senators' list of RFAs and UFAs and see who could be next, as there is bound to be turnover. There always is, but now that the entire organization has done their season, Belleville's done, we can look at the Belleville's UFAs, RFAs as well, and say, hey, who's worth coming back? Who should Ottawa move on from for different opportunities? That's all next. Plus, we've got a goalie on our NHL draft rankings today. We've got a London Knight and a player from the U.S. national team development program. That's all coming up. You're listening to Locked On Senators, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. You guys already know FanDuel is the official online sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network, and it's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball's regular season is in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every single game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 whether you win or lose. You'll love to see it. You can bet everything from slap shots, home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. I'm on FanDuel's website right now, and if you're looking to get some action in on the NHL playoffs, Ross, the Florida Panthers are a heavy favorite tonight up against the Boston Bruins, minus 205 for the Panthers, but plus 168 for the Bruins. So depending on how you feel about this game, those odds are swinging heavily in the Panthers' favor. And then you got the Vancouver Canucks and Edmonton Oilers. That series is always interesting. The Oilers switching goalies. What a surprise. We'll see how that works out for them. If you think you know how that's going to work out for them, why not put your money where your mouth is at FanDuel? So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.
Today's episode is also brought to you by our very good friends over at Farm to Fork. Farm to Fork is a premium meat and seafood delivery service that will take care of you in Ontario, Quebec, and up in Nunavut. They are bringing you the best quality meats that are raised all natural, antibiotic and hormone-free, and ethically raised. Also, it's got to be known that it's delicious. Just look at their average 5-star reviews on Google. If you head to the website farm2forkdelivery.ca, that's the number 2, farm2forkdelivery.ca, you'll find the May weekend barbecue bundle already discounted. And because you're a listener of Locked On Senators, take 10% off by using the promo code LOSP10. That's 10% off your first purchase by using LOSP10. Pilsy, listen to this. 8 ribeyes. We've got 10 prime rib burgers and 10 famous bacon wrapped chicken breasts brought to you by Farm to Fork. So that is 28 pieces of meat for $300. That is an amazing deal with ribeyes and all the fixins. So go check out farm2forkdelivery.ca and taste the Farm to Fork difference. I'm telling you, the bundles are the way to go. Stack the freezer and never get caught with your hands in the air wondering, what am I going to do for dinner? You've always got it at Farm to Fork. And why it's great to do the bundles too is because they are individually vacuum sealed. So you can only pull out what you need any given day. Oh yeah. And it also keeps all the freshness in after they're hand cut at the butcher's table. So support local. Our guy, Derek, absolute beauty, takes care of you with Farm to Fork. That's farm2forkdelivery.ca. Taste the Farm to Fork difference. You will never go back to grocery store meats. Pilsy. So one last thought on the Lassie Thompson thing, because I can already see there's going to be at least one person that points this out. So I'm just going to go ahead and take it right away from them to say that. I pulled up who the Senators didn't have the opportunity or didn't take instead of Lassie Thompson. if we go the other way, it's pretty tough. Now, this is no fault of the Senators. They drafted 19th that year, but look at the names right in front of them. Thomas Harley, unreal defenseman right now with the Dallas Stars. Peyton Krebs, 215 NHL games. You got Alex Newhook, Cole Caulfield, Cam York, Spencer Knight, Matt Boldy, and Victor Soderstrom. So, hey, Arizona, I'm looking at you guys for fumbling the bag among defensemen in the top 19. But there's some good players.
The Edmonton Oilers, Ross. Philip
Yeah.
Broberg at 8. That hasn't worked out for them.
Imagine they took Zegras or Cam York or Cole Caulfield, Alex Newhook. Yeah. So just wanted to get ahead of that, but the Senators did not have opportunity to draft those certain players. They do have an opportunity to decide who is in and who is out among their free agents this summer. We already did an episode right after the season focusing on the NHL free agents, but just a reminder, here it is. In the terms of the NHLers, we've got really just one UFA, and that's Dominic Kubalik. That to me is a surprise. That's like, it might be an indictment because there's not a whole lot of flexibility from that standpoint, but there's also a 0% chance they bring back Dominic Kubalik. So that one we can almost say adieu, goodbye, farewell, auf Wiedersehen, saying goodnight. So RFAs, NHLers, you've got Shane Pinto, Parker Kelly, and Boris Kachuk, and then on the back end, Eric Brandstrom. And I thought it was interesting to note that Bruce Garriock in his article talking about Lassi Thomson also noted the Sens have a decision to make whether or not to even qualify Eric Brandstrom at just over $2 million. That would be shades of Anthony Duclair, but it sounds like Steve Stais, general manager, president of Hockey Ops, tried to trade Brandy at the deadline, and there was no interest. So that's going to be a curious situation to follow going forward. What other names on here, Pillsy, other than the NHL guys, jump out as you as a guy who we could see in the coming days take the Lassi Thomson route and take their talents back to Europe? I shouldn't say back. Some guys may have never been over there.
Yeah, I think immediately you're looking at Yuri Shmekal. I think his time in North America didn't go the way he would hope, and I
love that he got his NHL goal in game 81 or 82.
Yeah, that is great. I'm glad he got it as well. So now, you get that in your back pocket, one NHL goal. That's nice. Nice little tidbit for your agent to clap back at European teams. Hey, he's got an NHL goal. You better bump that salary up. So I think Shmekal will probably go back to Europe. That's probably the right move for him. And then this one hurts, Ross, but
I know.
I don't know what's going to go on with Igor Sokolov.
You just look at how long it took him to get his contract at the start of the season.
Now, different manager group here, and we know Pierre Dorion wasn't exactly Igor's biggest fan as things went on.
He was negotiating, though, with Ryan Bonus more so.
Yes. I think Igor could get a very, very good offer in the KHL. And so at this point, he kind of has to decide, do I want the bag or do I still believe?
Or do I want Belleville? Do I want Belleville or the bag?
Yeah, Bell Vegas or the bag. Yeah, I'm not sure what direction he's going to go there, Ross. I think Igor is going to have to make a big decision. And then as far as other players go, Ross, I think a lot of these other guys are probably going to stay in North America. Curry's already been in the KHL, so clearly he already made the decision. He wants to kind of keep the dream alive and give things another go in North America. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's picked up by another team. I'm not necessarily certain that he's going to stay in Belleville, although he did have a nice. Nice
feels like they almost went too not overboard, but a little too far with the veterans. Like there's going to be you need Pettersson in the lineup every game next year in the AHL. You need to have these, and I know there's transactions. There's a lot of depth that you need at the AHL level.
Yes.
But I just feel like out of those 5 guys between Josh Curry, Rourke Chartier, Matthew Highmore, Boko Imama, and Garrett Pilon, Curry would be the guy for me where it's like, thank you, good year of service, but we're going to keep the other 4 guys as Belleville depth.
Yeah, I don't know. I wasn't that high on Highmore either, so I wouldn't be surprised if maybe he falls by the wayside. But I've said it many times. I think they've got to keep Amama here. He's such a fan favorite in Belleville, and the key to having AHL teams thrive like that is keeping fan favorites around like that.
Yes.
Like otherwise,
Agreed.
the kids that love Amama,
Yep.
they're not going to want to come to the games. You know, they've got the jerseys, they're stoked, and plus, we heard Stephen Halliday say it. Amama is a guy you want in the AHL to make the young players feel safe out there. So definitely you want to bring him back. And then Garrett Peelsy was Belleville's MVP. It would be wild for them not to bring him back.
Agreed. And then on the back end, Jacob Larson and Dylan Hetherington. Larson had a bit of an up and down year, in my opinion. I think the ball's probably in his court. Sounds like he's just an unreal guy. And again, you need to have some sort of consistency for the fans. I think that's a great point.
Just quickly on Larson too, we know he just had a child in Sweden. So he's at that crossroad in his career where it's like, okay, do I want to keep the dream alive? Because he's already had a decent chunk of NHL games and he's been in the American Hockey League. So do I want to keep this dream alive, or do I go home and have stability and play somewhere in the SHL, which you can't blame him if that's the decision he makes.
And will Dylan Hetherington become the first 3-year captain of the Belleville Sens?
I don't know. It seems like Belleville captains are, they're not able to hold them for a long time. So I'm interested to see what Hetherington will do.
He was making big money in the AHL. He was making $325K playing the A.
He was, definitely. And they need some veteran guys on that back end. So if they decide to keep him, I would be in favor of that.
I think you keep one of him or Larson.
Yeah, agreed. And then our guy Footy has told us that he really hopes that they bring Matim Palo back. He thought he was a great influence among the younger defensemen. He was a steady guy on the back end. So, but then Matim Palo, that's a guy with pro experience over in Europe as well. Maybe he wants to go home. We don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Max Gannett, I think it's interesting that he got his game at the end of the year, or got a call up, because to me, he was like a Dorian guy, right? 7th round pick. He was a guy who Dorian was very high on. So interesting to note that this regime also gave him a call up, and he was an AHL All-Star this year. I hope he's back next season as well. Among the forwards for the AHL, the only guy to me here for the RFAs where it's like, yeah, maybe he gets another opportunity or wants one would be Cole Reinhardt, because he's kind of stuck in a bottom 6 AHL role here. Maybe he thinks if he goes to another organization, maybe he can get some more opportunity, just because he's kind of buried in that role there where it's like, you're a good penalty killer, not going to light up the score sheet, but I'd be happy if he comes back. Jamison Reese is an interesting one because they picked him up, but then
they traded for him.
Right. But he didn't even get up in the playoff lineup. So that'll be curious. And then Bon Giovanni, you got to bring back. I mean, come on.
Him and Stephen Halliday, the chemistry they have together, I think it'd be a huge mistake not to bring back Bonjo.
And I mean, no brainer. Angus Crookshank made an impact in the NHL level this year. You bring Crooker back next season. Crookshank is a different situation. He cannot be offer sheeted because he doesn't have the requisite number of games played. So just an interesting note there. And then for more on the NHL guys, I mean, we've covered Shane Pinto's contract in depth, so you can go check out those episodes previously. Parker Kelly, Boris Kachuk, the other RFAs for the Ottawa Senators. In goal, Matt Sogard needs a new contract. He's RFA, as is Kevin Mandolese. Mando, I'd love to see him get some more opportunity. It just feels like he's kind of stuck in that third horse in the race between him and Levi Marilainen. So we'll see what happens in goal with the Ottawa and the Belleville Senators. Of course, we are your team every day. Anything that happens in Sensland, we will be here live on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. So make sure to like, subscribe, comment. They all go a long way to helping the show grow. And check out the mock draft we did just last week. That mock draft was just for the top 8. Stay tuned. We're about a month away from our final mock draft. We're already starting to reach out to our scouts who we are hoping to get on our full first round mock draft. Yes, we are complete draft junkies, and we are glad that you are too. Speaking of which, we began our top 80 countdown yesterday. So let's continue that. We've got 3 interesting players up next. You're listening to Locked On Senators. It's your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Policy Genius. Guys, Policy Genius is the country's leading online insurance marketplace. So if you want to save time, you want to save money, that sound good to you? Well, you got to use Policy Genius, because They can help you find life insurance policies that start at just $292 a year for $1 million worth of coverage. Some options offer same-day approval and avoid unnecessary medical exams as well. Policy Genius helps you compare all your options from the top companies, but maybe you're not sure what you're looking for. Don't worry. They have a team of licensed experts that are going to help walk you through it. You can easily compare quotes from America's top insurers in just a few clicks so you can find the option that works best for you. Look, guys, your work life insurance policy may not offer enough protection for your family's needs. Even worse, it may not come with you if you leave your job. So Policy Genius gives you unbiased advice from their licensed expert support team, and they don't have any incentive to recommend one insurer over another. So you can trust that they're going to find what's best for you. Don't just take our word for it. They got thousands of 5-star reviews on Google. So check life insurance off your to-do list in no time with Policy Genius. Head to policygenius.com/lockedonnhl or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/lockedonnhl.
We have made it back to our countdown. And if you missed yesterday's show, you can also check that out wherever you get your podcast. But we can tell you that number 80 on our list of Ottawa Senators, not even Ottawa Senators, just NHL draft rankings, is Miroslav Shatan Jr. Then coming in number 79, Pillsy, help me out with this one. I got it. I don't know. Daniil Usnikov, and then Simon Zether as well. So those guys come in 78, 79, and 80. And with that, coming in at number 77 on our NHL draft rankings for 2024 is Carter George, the goaltender for the Owen Sound Attack. And wow, he had himself a tournament at the World Under-18s, helping Canada advance to the gold medal game where they beat the United States 6-4 and took home that gold medal. Pillsy, we weren't even going to put a goalie on the list until then, but hey, you get that kind of hardware, we'll get you into the top 80.
We needed a goalie in our prospect rankings. It would have been a damn shame for a hashtag goalie friendly show not to cover one tendy. So we got our guy here, Carter George. And you mentioned he plays for the Owen Sound Attack in my neck of the woods here. And look, he may not jump out at you when you look at his dimensions, 6'1", 196 pounds. So a smaller goalie here. But
whoa, what's wrong with being 6'1"?
It's a small tendy, Ross. Little man syndrome there. No, just all jokes aside. Sometimes, Ross, honestly, I have a lot of respect for goalies that are, under 6'3", because like those guys they don't have that advantage of just simply having more surface area to take up more of the net. They got to be smarter, faster, stronger. They got to read the play. Like they're at such a disadvantage that they need to find ways to elevate their game. And Carter George is doing that. Ross, I don't know if you know this, but we've got a connection to Carter George.
What is that?
Our connection to Carter George is, remember our good friend, Pete Fry, the goalie mental coach?
Yes.
Carter George is one of Pete Fry's clients, patients. I don't know the proper word. Friends. Sure, we'll go with friends. But he was mentioning, he was being interviewed after Canada beat Sweden 5-4 in the U18s. And they asked him, how do you keep your cool in those tight situations where there's a lot of pressure on you? And he said, I've worked with my mental coach, Pete Fry, and we've found ways to help me stay calm and stuff. And that's a huge boost. And I'm glad he mentioned that, because Pete Fry does great work. Go check out our interview with him.
Hilarious.
Fascinating guy. And he has a lot of young goalies that he's mentoring. And you can see it on the ice, Ross. Like I watched Carter George had a 50 save shutout against the Barrie Colts, also in my neck of the woods. But the highlights from that game, cool, calm, collected, no rebounds, always in position, not frantically going around in his crease. Like you can tell that this is a guy that's really worked on his craft, and the results show, especially Obviously, when you look at OHL goaltending stats, I think you need to take it with a grain of salt. The OHL is a skilled offensive league, and I feel like sometimes the goalies get shelled, but still a winning record. And then when he played for Canada in the U18s, 6-0 record. How's that?
Pretty good. Now
Pretty
you
good.
can look into it, and he had 2 shutouts in 4 games under a 900 save percentage. So those 2 shutouts were doing a lot of work, but he had to earn them as well. In terms of rankings, Scott Wheeler has him as an honorable mention, just outside of his top 64. Bob McKenzie has him at 70 on his list, and Elite Prospects, the highest on him, at 59. So he comes in with an average rank of 64.5, but his record just over 500 in the OHL, 23, 21, and 6, a 330 goals against average, but a save percentage above 900 with 4 shutouts, including the one Pillsy mentioned with 50 saves. So this is a guy who really comes out and challenges well. He's great at looking around screens. I noticed that when I'm watching clips of him as well, is that there's no panic in his game, and the rebounds seem to die when they hit him. He's able to cover them up. He's not sprawling all over his crease. He's not one of those goalies who's, he's athletic. Of course he is, but he's not having to make desperation saves. He does a great job of staying in position. If there's one thing he's got to work on, it's just the quickness. And as he moves up, when he plays in the ECHL, if he does, or the AHL, he's going to have to be ready to take on these pro shooters that are snapping it around much quicker, and the plays are a lot more set, and the pace is something that he needs to work on. But all in all, I think he's a nice prospect. If Ottawa took him with one of their 4th round picks, I would have zero problem with that. I think that he's a guy who's going to need at least 2 more years back in the OHL, though. This is a long-term investment if you're drafting Carter George.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Ross. I don't see why. Obviously, you done limited research on goalies in this draft because there's not a lot of hyped ones. I don't see why he's not the first goalie selected, if not among the crop of first goalies selected here. And yeah, I think that's fair to say he's a bit of a project, Ross. This was his first full season with the Owen Sound attack, as the season before he only played 10 games, although good start. He had a 7-3 record, 241 goals against, and 924 save percentage the season before in 10 games with Owen Sound. So I think this is a guy that he's going to build his confidence as he gets more comfortable playing in the OHL. And now he's officially on international radars for Team Canada. So that's going to help his confidence too. So this is a prospect I'm going to be watching. And I think whatever team gets him, if they can develop him and give him the time needed, they might have a nice goalie here.
How many stars for Carter George?
So I gave 3 out of 5 stars here, just because I feel like the Ottawa Senators are in a position where they don't desperately need a goalie prospect. And I think if the Sens were to go for a goalie prospect, Ross, I think they would take a flyer on a guy in late rounds as opposed to using a 2nd, 3rd, or 4th round pick on a guy here.
Totally. Now, Carter George is from Thunder Bay, Ontario, and born May 20th. So towards the later end, a younger player in this draft, which scouts will like, especially with a goalie, a ton to work with going forward. So that is Carter George, who comes in at number 77 on our Ottawa Senators-esque NHL draft rankings. Coming in at number 76 on our 2024 NHL draft rankings, we are going to the Ontario Hockey League. And in a rare circumstance, at the time of this recording, that player is still lacing them up because the London Knights are in the OHL finals, and Sam O'Reilly had a big part in a huge comeback win recently. In a game where they were down 6-2 going into the 3rd period, he scores the game-tying goal with under 3 minutes left. So dare I say that Sam O'Reilly has the clutch gene?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely fair, Ross. As a guy that has limited experience in the OHL, this is his first kind of time in the spotlight, and he's shining. You mentioned his success in the last game, Ross. In 15 total playoff games, he has 5 goals and 7 assists. The London Knights currently have a 3-0 lead on Oshawa right now, so that win was huge. Changing a series from 3-0 instead of 2-1 is so massive, especially London's trying to punch their ticket to the Mem Cup. So they're only 1 game away now, and Sam O'Reilly has a big part to play in that. As in the regular season, in 68 games, he had 20 goals, 36 assists, good for 56 points. And how about a plus 32 plus minus? This guy gets it done on both ends of the ice, Ross.
He certainly does, and he's earned his spot at number 46 on Bob McKenzie's list, where he's talking to NHL scouts, whereas Craig Button, as he's projecting him into the future, has him down at 62. I always find it interesting when Bob and Craig are very different with their rankings. Scott Wheeler has him as an honorable mention just outside his top 64, while Elite Prospects had him at number 81, so down low and pushing his average rank down to 63. Sam O'Reilly's a 6'1", 178-pound right shot centerman, born in March, so middle of the road in terms of the age for this draft. But what I like about him is he's in the perfect development spot. We always talk about the London Knights as the crown jewel of the CHL, not even just Ontario, the entire Canadian Hockey League. And outside of certain prospects, I can't think of one off the top of my head, a big rangy defenseman that did a whole lot of nothing. Outside of him, it feels like a lot of players that get drafted out of London, and I'm not talking about, the top 5 picks, the Patty Kanes, the Rick Nashes of the world. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about the players who are going to go back, and Matthew Tkachuk, Mitch Marner, like you can go a lot more recent when you're talking about these top end guys. But the other guys, like Oliver Bonk just last year, he goes late first round. Boom, he explodes offensively. Like they're in such a good place where if you're drafting a guy from the London Knights, Easton Cowan last year, nobody even knew who he was when the Leafs took him at the end of the first round. And now he's a can't miss type prospect. So when you're drafting out of the London Knights, you're going to get a player that's going to have pro habits when they come to the NHL. And you're going to have a guy who's well matured at both ends of the ice. So for me, this is a guy where even if a team took him with an early second round pick, I don't think he can get into the first round, but with a second round pick, I think you're going to see a team have them higher on their list just based on the skill set. First off, a guy who, the points don't lie, where he's almost at a point per game there while putting up good defensive metrics, but he's also a guy who you could see being a third line centerman at the NHL level with like a strong probability. And that's where you have to weigh upside versus probability that they reach that. And that's where I think you're going to find Sam O'Reilly higher, because I don't think he's ever going to be a 50, 60 point guy at the NHL level, but he's going to give you defensive value as well.
Yeah, I agree. Ross, for some reason, the player that popped into my mind doing player comparables, and this is always risky, as you guys know, famously, I've had player comparables come back to bite me, but kind of reminds me of like an Anthony Cirelli type guy, right? Like he's got the offensive talent, but no one's saying he's like an elite goal scorer or he's going to put up massive points, but also he plays a great defensive game that coaches love. So Sam O'Reilly certainly could fit into that type of mold.
Our quotables here from the NHL Central Scouting, they say Sam O'Reilly has good game habits, is hard to play against, and plays with some bite as well. Very good offensive hockey sense, is hard to contain down low, and he's gaining more confidence offensively, and that's great to see, because as you mentioned, Pilsy, this guy didn't come into the OHL at 16 right out of the draft. He had to earn his spot in the OHL. He played all of last season other than 5 games, but played most of last season with the London Nationals in the Junior A circuit. So he had to earn his spot on this London Knights roster. And I think as the Toronto native gets more and more comfortable, you're going to see him kind of be a guy who's going to come onto people's radars maybe quicker than they would have thought. Our friend Brock Otten with McKean's Hockey helped us out with the mock draft last year, said he really wanted to put him higher, and there's a chance he does at the draft. He's just hesitant because he doesn't love his skating. And if you know how Elite Prospects ranks players, there's no surprise that corroborates with their low ranking of 81 on him. He definitely needs to work on his skating. But again, if there's an organization in the CHL that I think will be able to turn that skating into at least NHL average, it's the London Knights.
Yeah, Ross, you just took my whole next rant. So well said. I was going to mention all those points.
How many stars?
So I got him at 3 stars here, Ross.
Okay.
I know maybe just another 3-star guy, but the thing is, I feel like this is a guy high floor, low ceiling. I think you know what you're going to get from him, which is good. And I feel like some people misinterpret that as a knock on a player, or saying he's a bust or he's not going to reach potential. That's not at all what I'm saying. In fact, I'm more putting it as a compliment. Like his skills are so good and safe and projectable that lowest that Sam O'Reilly will still be a nice prospect, but I agree with you. I think we're looking at a third line player here that's going to provide a spark of offense, but mostly play a hard defensive game.
Sam O'Reilly comes in at number 76 on our 2024 NHL Draft rankings. Coming in at number 75 on our NHL Draft rankings for 2024, the first of many visits to the U.S. National Team Development Program. We are going to be discussing centerman Christian Humphreys, who's coming off a very impressive showing at the World Under-18s.
Yep, Christian Humphreys is an intriguing prospect for sure. From Pittsburgh, 5'11", 170 pounds, plays center, shoots right. Ross, he made an interesting decision. When he was 16, he committed to Michigan State, but then he changed his mind later, decommitted, and then this is an interesting decision, decommitting from Michigan State and going to the University of Michigan. So some state rivalry right there, as I'm sure if those teams played, they won't let him forget it. But Ross, I read an article that EP did, and it mentioned why he did this switch. And he kind of reflected and said, look, I was 16 at the time. That was in 2022. I just kind of decided on them, and I hadn't really fully done my research. And I don't think he meant to say this as a knock to Michigan State.
He should just blame the pandemic.
Sure. Yeah, that's an easy blame for sure. But he more cited and wanted to kind of pump up how Michigan just wowed him with their recruitment. He talked to the coach. I'm blanking on the coach's name for, I apologize for that. But
well, it used to be Red Berenson. I know he stepped down.
No, it's not him. But he talked to the coach, and the coach really showed him all the access to video that they had. Like, he was talking to the coach, and he was like, you want to see all your ozone shifts from last year? Boom, typed his name in, put all the ozone shifts. You want to see all the face-offs you took in the neutral zone? Boom, had it all ready for them. And that really wowed Humphreys, apparently. And, you know, when you're choosing what college to go to, you want to go to a spot where you feel like ideologies match together. And he said that really seemed like a fit because he wants to be watching video, learning, using analytics to prop up his game and to find his weaknesses. So I think that's where he really wanted to make that switch. And we'll see if he ends up regretting that decision or if he thinks it was the right choice as his career goes on here.
Brandon Naurato is the name of the head coach with the University of Michigan. And so you're telling me that Christian Humphreys is a hockey nerd. And I think that's a great way to be described when you're in the prospect cycle and when you want to be able to go to the next level. Now with Christian Humphreys, I just look at Pittsburgh and the type of players that have come out of there. Vinny Trocheck and JT Miller come to mind, where it's like, these guys are pains in the ass to play against. But with Christian Humphreys, he did a lot of his damage on the score sheet this year with 52 games, 58 points, 23 goals as well, with a +14 rating. Now, he's one of the older players in the draft. It's worth noting that he's a February birthday, but Wheeler's high on him. Wheeler's got him up at 47 with the Athletics NHL draft rankings, where Bob McKenzie has him all the way down at 77. So I was like, okay, only 2 of our 7 entities. Now, albeit a couple of them have only put out top 32s right now, but a bit of a surprise to me that he wasn't ranked so much. So I went over to the NHL Central Scouting, and they had him at 71 among North American skaters. So they've got him past 100. Do you think there's a chance that the Ottawa Senators would have an opportunity to draft this guy in the 4th round? Do you think he lasts that long?
I mean, it's so hard to say, Ross. We're so early on into our draft rankings. I haven't really got a sense of where things are going, but just based on these rankings, it's not crazy to think that he slips through the cracks and someone's able to scoop him up later than really he should be valued at.
It's going to be outside the 1st round. That much I know for sure, but it almost feels like he could be going to a team that already has a deep prospect pool, and then he could almost just be kind of a depth, like not have any pressure on him in terms of like, hey, get to the NHL quick. I think it could be a longer path, but what a place to be at University of Michigan to be able to hone your craft and get better and try to get the offense a bit more consistency with that. And you're like, wait, what? 58 points in 52 games. I mean, he has to be providing some level of offense. He has, but the reason why he's been able to produce some offense is because he's playing with such great players as well. He's the defensive responsibility on his line for the most part. And he was even playing top line for a while at the USNTDP. And he's playing with like James Hagens, who's not even in this draft. He's in next year's draft, who had 102 points in 58 games. Cole Eiserman set the record for most goals overall. He had 58 this year. So even though the numbers look great, right? 58 points, 52 games, that's 7th on his own team in scoring. So it's not like he was the guy offensively. And I don't think he ever really needs to become that. I look at him a lot like I look at Sam O'Reilly, and I'm glad that these two guys are on the same stage. They're going to look to be third line defensive centers who can also contribute down low and get their teammates involved. I think one underrated part from what I'm reading about Christian Humphreys is that he makes his teammates better because of his hockey IQ. He's able to get guys in the right spots and find them in areas where they can have success. So I think he's a great complementary type prospect that a team that has deep depth would love to have in their system.
Yeah, I would agree with most of that, Ross. I feel like on a line, he's not going to be driving a line. He's going to be supporting and elevating other guys on his line, which goes along with what you were saying for sure. A lot of scouts, the first thing they mention about him that I notice is his shot. He's got a great shot. I mean, 23 goals in 52 games is pretty damn good, especially when you take into account that his teammates, especially Eiserman, is getting a lot of those finishing touches that Humphreys wouldn't really be privy to, just the way the hierarchy goes. But Ross, a knock I found on him is for a guy that's playing center, 5'11", 170 pounds, sure, he can hang when it comes to the USHL and being on the national team development program. But as he's going to get elevated in competition levels, that size is really going to make things hard for him to battle other centermen, especially if he's playing up against top line centermen, which usually will have a little bit more size. And sure, he's got a great shot, but a lot of scouts were saying the one thing he needs to work on is finding a way to get into those soft areas of ice where he has open space and he can get a pass and use that shot. Apparently, he's not been able to find those spaces and he's not able to get into high danger scoring chances where he can really utilize that shot and finish plays. So, we're nitpicking here, but that's one thing I noticed a couple people were saying about Humphreys.
How many stars for Christian Humphreys as a potential pick for the Ottawa Senators?
I give him 3.5 stars, Ross. And my star rating is based on should the Sens draft him based on their needs and where they're picking, but also just generally what I think of the prospect overall. So I give him 3.5 stars here because I really think that these are types of players that scouts, it shows your scouting team shine when you can identify a guy that's 7th on his own team in scoring, but you're like, okay, let's zoom out here. And if you put him on a top OHL team, he's probably top 3 player there, right? Or you move him around and things can work. So those are the types of guys where not necessarily like almost like a Perot type guy, Ross. Like everyone's looking at his teammates as they should be, but then
you're talking Gabe Perot from last year?
Yes. Yeah. Everyone's looking at his teammates, like, right, like the Leonards, the was Will Smith on that team?
Yeah, it was Will Smith. That was the line, the trio.
Exactly. Okay, perfect. I'm right on track then. So everyone's looking at those guys and being like, yeah, Gabe Perot was a part of that, but he wasn't the guy. So we're not that interested in him. Where didn't he go to the Rangers at like
23 around there?
That's insane value to get a guy like that just because he's in the shadow of other elite players. So I think Humphreys is a guy that you'll see teams that have really focused scouting groups. They'll identify him as someone that they're going to watch. And if he slides, they're going to jump on that. So I give Christian Humphreys 3.5 stars.
Christian Humphreys comes in at number 75 on our top 80 NHL draft rankings. All right, Pillsy, any final thoughts on today's show? Good show, by the way. Good show.
Yeah, you too, buddy. Great show. Final thoughts for me is I'm going to be dialed into playoff hockey tonight, Ross. We already talked about it in our FanDuel ad read, but this Boston-Florida game is going to be fascinating. And then
I'm addicted to plus 200 numbers, by the way. I'm going to be putting a little bit on the Boston Bruins tonight.
Okay, well, they were at plus 168 money
maybe
line.
I'll get them in regulation, get real wild.
Yeah, if you look at the regulation, you'll get to that coveted plus 200 number, Ross. And then I don't know about you, but my mind switches whether I think Vancouver's going to dominate this series or whether I think Edmonton's going to figure it out. But it's all going to depend on Calvin Pickard here. Like,
Yes.
Can he prop up this Edmonton Oilers team?
Jack Campbell's there.
Yeah, it's. I don't know if you go to him yet, but that the Jack Campbell move, Ross, would be one of those moves where anyone who knows Jack Campbell knows he's beloved by his teammates. So that would be a boost where it would almost be like, we got to get this win for Jack or Soupy, as I'm sure they call him.
Yeah, well, I think we're going to see a big game for Connor McDavid after getting cross-checked in the mouth. He's going to want to, put a
that screenshot is ridiculous.
Amazing. It looks like he's in a guillotine.
Yeah, honestly.
Off with his head.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't on purpose. Like the cross check came from behind at the perfect time, the imperfect time. That is a grown man's series between Vancouver and Edmonton. I will be dialed into that. Last night I was doing some chores and it was 1-0 Rangers. I was like, I'll sit down with 10 minutes left and watch them bring it home. Watch my Rangers bring it home. I got a future on FanDuel that they win 2 series. So I was like, okay, I'll have some green numbers in the account. All good. I sit down. It's 3-1 Hurricanes.
Yeah, that got out of hand quickly there. And similar, Ross, like sometimes when you're down in series, it's all about inserting guys that boost the team. Evgeny Kuznetsov, after being a healthy scratch, comes into the lineup, and sure enough, he's doing the bird flap. He gets a goal. So that's going to be a big boost in morale for that club.
Yeah, it certainly will. And then last night, Dallas, I mean, just full throttle over the Avalanche. And of course, some sad news or kind of like disheartening news with what's his first name? Valerie Nichushkin, being suspended 6 months for substance abuse, failed a drug test after he had already been in the NHL player assistance program. Like, he was a goal scoring machine. Didn't he score in 7 straight games to start the playoffs?
He's a huge part of that team, Ross. And
that's 2 playoff runs that they haven't had him.
And that's the thing. They got to figure out what's going on there because his salary cap is going to come back into the picture when he's allowed to come back in November. So how do they juggle that? That'll be interesting. But Ross, the crazy thing is, I believe that announcement was made half an hour before.
The players had to know, though. The players had to have known when he didn't show up.
Yeah.
I
mean, that's a good indicator that a guy's not going to play if he's not there. Yeah.
Well, the players seem like they're like, you'd think usually it's like all support, all that. Jack Johnson's like, yeah, he made his own decisions. That's all I have to say. Like, seems like trouble in paradise, but I watched that guy destroy the Winnipeg Jets in the first round. So wish him all the best. He's obviously a huge player when he's on his game, man. He can shoot. He can play down low. He's a power forward. So hope for him the best. And they were without Devin Taves last night with an illness, and they got throttled. Man, I saw our guy Jerome Berube, who's going to be on the mock draft. Great guy. He's with hockeyprospect.com. He's like Wyatt Johnson on Team Canada Olympic team. And at first you're like, that's crazy. And then you're like, can you name 12 Canadian forwards better than Wyatt Johnston right now? I don't think you can.
Yeah, it's not that crazy, Ross. And he was so close to getting a hat trick hours before his 21st birthday, but
he's 20 years old, 21 today.
Now.
That is unreal. He's already got 106 points in 164 NHL games. He's never missed a game.
Yeah.
He's played all 82 both years. And then he's already played 30 playoff games and has 11 goals, including 7 in 11 games this year. This kid is a stud.
And Ross, hashtag good teammate. He was coming in on the empty net, and he could have dipsy doodled around the Avs defenseman and at least tried to score a hat trick for himself. Passes it over to Steele, gets the easy goal, 5-1, bang. That's all she wrote. So yeah, the Dallas Stars has dominated, and even some poor, like on the power play, Cale Makar trying to break the puck up ice and gives it away, and they score shorthanded. Dallas does. That's not something you see from the Colorado Avalanche.
No, and Miro Heiskanen's on his game, 7 points in his last 4 games. Our boys with the Locked On Stars podcast tweeted that one out. Pretty impressive there. So another big night of NHL action, and we'll be back to break it all down tomorrow. Looking ahead at tomorrow's NHL draft rankings that we have, we've got a couple players. I'll leave it at that for now. No. Like dogs, like guys who you want to have in the battle on your team. That's what I'll leave it at for today. We say goodbye. That's Brandon Piller. I'm Ross Levitan. Thank you so much for listening, watching, engaging with the show. We truly appreciate it. Have a great one. We'll talk tomorrow. This has been another edition of the Locked On Senators podcast. It's your team every day.